Oh yeah, I'm not sure what your UV rating is, but it's been very, very high. There's something going on in the sun that is not good at all. But most people are totally oblivious to all of this and the electromagnetic changes. I think we're in that period of time that the Book of Enoch talked about, where the seasons all get messed up here. For example, we are having all kinds of weird stuff going on. The apple trees, the plants, they seem all messed up. It's like they really don't know where they are or what season they're actually in. So, I don't know. What about this storm? Or we should say storms. Have you been tracking any of that?
Trying to watch it pretty closely. Interesting name for this new one. I think Hermes or something like that.
Yes.
It sounds more like a spacecraft than a storm. But however, it's interesting the way this thing has come in, off Africa and come in to the region it has and made it into the Gulf of Mexico. And I was watching it by satellites earlier, and it's really, really big. It strengthened from a depression number 9 to a tropical storm and got named already today. And now they're saying it's strengthening in the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. They're watching it very, very closely, and they think that it may gain hurricane strength before it begins wherever it decides to landfall. They're looking at northern Florida, but they're not really sure.
Well, no, as I understand it, the governor has declared a state of emergency, and they're expecting 8, 12, 20 inches of rain in some places, I guess.
Well, that's what I'm hearing, and you can certainly, you're certainly also watching a very nervous Louisiana and Texas coast that's hoping it don't come any further their direction.
Yeah, I suppose, because they really don't know. Now, I did hear, I don't know if it's true or not, that they expect this thing to track all the way up through to Maine, all along the coastal regions because of some other tropical depression that's out there in the Atlantic, that it's going to hold it closer to shore than normal, they thought, maybe? Have you heard any more about that? I mean, this thing, you remember the people who, I don't know if you call them visions or what, but they were talking about a disaster that was going to occur in either September or October, and it was going to be a major disaster. Do you suppose this could be it?
I remember that, and also, if you remember, the seer from Finland, Norway, Anton Johansson, he also had spoke about a storm he was shown that that literally go up basically that same route and devastate a lot of areas. But they are saying that this is projected possibly to just go up the entire East Coast, and that's covering a lot of land.
Well, I know it's and they don't need any more water in that area than they already have. And usually when they get nailed, all the low-lying, I remember Red Elk making a comment. He said this was from the prophecy that the Lord gave him about what was going to happen in America. And he said, if you're by a river, you're by a brook, you're by a stream, you better move out because they're going to become raging torrents, which is interesting because of the bots and their atmospheric rivers. And now they're talking about, I don't know what you call them, popcorn storms.
Yeah.
They look like nuclear bombs going off. They appear basically out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you're in a deluge. So what's going on? Is this can't be just jet stream related, and it can't just be, I don't believe it's just solar related either. there's got to be some massive changes going on that maybe we're not cognizant of that are causing all this erratic weather. I know we were given a warning, I can't remember who gave it, but that maybe this year we're going to be making up for all the years we had no hurricanes at all, because they're coming off Africa one after another. In fact, it was just pointed out this afternoon that there's another huge storm that they're watching coming off from Africa right now. It's already developing into a circular pattern.
I remember that, and I've seen that, and also, there's been a number of reports, and Stanley was one of those that is reporting that the sun, the anomalous sun activity, which, between you and I and the fence post, more or less, we know that the dwarf star, the binary star of this system that's so close now in range with our own sun, that this probably is affecting because of its massive, massive gravity, and effect, and it is affecting our sun, which in turn is affecting the Earth and the other planets too. Matter of fact, there's a lot of reports lately on solar weather that a lot of the planets are brightening. Even their moons are brightening, which you can think of scriptures that talk about that. But there seems to be, you were asking what effect is causing this weird weather systems and stuff change. I would think that what is happening is the interior, the core of the planet. Sandero says it's number one, it's in movement. It's also changing a little bit like its shape to some degree is what they're saying. It's also moving magma under the earth, moving it around, and I would think that, but we are seeing really the most anomalous weather systems. I'm hearing it from everywhere. Even people in the Philippines are writing me that things are strange there too. And for number one, I've had a constant. I always like growing sunflowers, and I like them to bloom out, and the hummingbirds go for them, and then they have the seeds. This year, Stuart, the plants seem like they came up late. They came up weak. They leaned a lot, and now, even before they've ever made any seeds, they're already drooping like it's fall. And a lot of the other brush and trees around where I live seem to be acting like it's fall already. They're changing colors a little, and it is so strange. And even the animals are acting strange.
Yeah, we've got color changes in the leaves right now here. Yeah, very odd. Let me just read something. Chapter 79. I'm going to only read part of it, and you can comment each sentence. It's from the book of Enoch, chapter 79. In the days of sinners, the years shall be shortened. I want to stop right there. How do you shorten the years? Now, we're on a 365.25 year, right? So does this thing say we're going to go back to the 360-day year? It seems to be implying that. And remember, the Lord said, except those days be shortened, the elect would not even survive it.
Well, that's true.
So this is kind of interesting. In the days of the sinners, the years will be shortened, which would imply that nature kind of goes berserk. Well, let me continue here. Their seed shall be backward, this is mankind, in their prolific soil. Everything done on earth shall be subverted and disappear in its season. The rain shall be restrained. Well, we haven't had that happen yet. And the heavens shall stand still. In those days, here's a clue right here. In those days, the fruit of the earth shall be late and not flourish in their season. And in their season, the fruits of the trees shall be withholden. The moon will change its laws and not be seen in its proper period. So that we must be in the preliminary ripples of these changes that are soon going to be upon us. So,
yeah, I think so.
If you heard, now we had Marshall Masters. Maybe we should get into that, because this may be what's causing a lot of this anomalous weather. He said that he had a friend of his evidently attend Dr. Doom, Major Ed Dames' kind of swan song revelations, I guess. And you listen to that. In fact, I think you're the one who sent it to me. You want to go into that a little bit? That's kind of frightening what he had to say.
Well, actually, it was. It was actually a debriefing. What they somewhat titled it, Ed Dames Exposing Planet X, which Marshall Masters indicated this will get you killed. I mean, this is a subject they will not allow to be spread around, and they have blocked it for years and years. And this report that he had was the latest Planet X 2016, breaking with Ed Dames, the Black Swan Song, and the Kill Shot. He says it's real, it's here. It's inbound and will be seen in Earth's sky December 2017. I mean, and they're not talking about taking a picture of something lower than the sun. They're talking about you can walk outside and look at it like the moon. It'll be that close. And I did have a pastor in the Philippines email me. I read it today. He had a dream about Nibiru, and that was the name of it, was Nibiru, and said that it would be, hear about that. He was saying about the same time as, Ed Dames is talking about, and you're talking about in the Omega Code, which I find amazingly, accurate. But Ed Dames basically shared this debriefing, and that's what released this information that I posted that today, actually, and I think, well, you've got it. It's a video on Marshall Masters.
Mm-hmm.
But it does go along with, even with the Torah code, that Richard Shaw posted, the latest one from Rabbi Glazerson. It really goes along your mega code and what Ed Dames had said and all the warnings in the same time frame. And interestingly, the name Nibiru, which seems to indicate that, matter of fact, and I'll share this, the pastor in the Philippines that wrote me said that his son actually gets a lot of viewing somewhat warnings from the Lord, and has been one that sent me some stuff on Obama. And one of the interesting things is one of the planets of this destroyer, the Nibiru, is actually inhabited, and they're non-human. And that just kind of goes along with what, other things that we know. And Ed Dames simply, indicates also in his revelation that he calls them Anunnaki, but whoever they are, they're not human particularly. You can be humanoid and not be human. I mean, there's a lot of angels that are humanoid in appearance, but they're certainly not human. And so all this stuff seems to be fitting together. And I saw on your post for the radio show tonight, you had some interesting information from your Omega Code there with timing.
Well, that's the thing that is really interesting to me, because if you go into Revelation on September 23rd, now it just dawned on me, I'm kind of slow that way, that 923, they've been pointing to 923 right along. In fact, we proved that 9/11 was actually 923. 9/11 on the Gregorian calendar actually was on the Israeli calendar 9/23. Now, if you go 9/23, that's September 23rd, right? Well, September 23rd, 2017 is Rosh Hashanah.
Oh.
So when you tie that together, that's when that star sign appears in the heavens. It's the only date it really shows up that accurately. So if the star sign of Revelation chapter 12, then after that it says a great red dragon. Well, that's probably Nibiru and the second sun. And it would be paralleling. In other words, we have the star sign on 923, and that's the warning. And then we have the passage of the entourage from the second sun, and the tribulation, the real tribulation, would then start. So that's what got me interested, is when you sent me that Bible code from Glazerson, and what Ed Dames said. He said it was going to be in December of 2017. Well, that matches almost perfectly with the book of Revelation chapter 12. So
well, what is interesting too, Stuart, and I'll read that for people that may not have heard this show or heard us talk before. I'll read this real quick. Richard Shaw had sent me Rabbi Glazerson's latest Torah code on Nibiru, and here's the wording in it, which is really interesting. Number one, and these are actually these are Hebrew finds of words in the Torah, and then they're translated into English, and I'm reading the English translations. Number one, in the end of days, and across that is Nibiru in 5776, warning, which is exactly, and I thought about that, Stuart. I thought, well, that's true. The Torah code that I'm reading right now that just came out is true as of a couple of days ago when Ed Dames released that warning, because that warning harmonizes with the Torah code. It just fits. And
yes, it does.
The warning has been established in 5776, which we're in right now, you know. And then number 5, now here's the most interesting wording that is in that Torah code. It says, and it's talking about Nibiru now, or the star. It says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel.
I see star of the sky. So, and this first one he has on his site there, lift up your eyes to the sky. Isn't that what the priest, I can't think of his name, Malachi Martin.
You're talking about Malachi Martin. Absolutely, that's what he said. That was, hey, and Stuart, that was literally the last warning he gave to Art Bell and his listeners before he was killed.
Yes. He said, watch the skies. So they've known that this thing is inbound for quite a while. They're calling it the star. Well, that matches up kind of with the Hopi and the blue star.
Yeah.
Also matches up with La Violette. So I'm wondering if there's not a big, massive convergence here of the gravity wave, the cosmic radiation wave, and the approach of the destroyer. I've often wondered why in the book of Daniel it says that there is a time of trouble not ever seen before.
That's true.
And some of the people that have researched ancient literature, and they ran it backwards, I guess, you know, they have these computer programs, where the last time we had this approach, the Earth was on the other side of the sun when it went by.
Yeah.
And so it although it did a lot of damage, and I think that's probably during Exodus, but what was interesting is this time they say we're going to be on the same side as this thing when it passes. So we've got the gravity wave, we've got the cosmic wave, we've got the close approach of this binary star system. We're in a lot of trouble, I think. And didn't you read somewhere, and I was looking for it, but I didn't do it quick enough, that the whole solar system has tilted?
That is what NASA, JPL, and I think Caltech is reporting, that something has tilted our entire solar system. And can you imagine what we kind of wonder, well, what would that be? However, what I find so interesting, and I believe what I'm saying is true. You can correct me if it's not, but for this gravity wave to come in during this time frame with all of this other, it would have had to leave where it is coming from 20,000 years ago to get here, at the same time as the destroyer, etc.
Yeah, it would have to be timed. I don't think people realize that the Lord doesn't play pool with this thing. It is a very delicately, accurately timed scenario that was set in motion, and I simply call it the agenda. It's a cosmic agenda, and nothing happens without his approval. And he set this in motion a long, long time ago. It depends on who you believe. Paul LaViolette claims 23,000 light years away. Others say it's 26,000 light years away, the galaxy core, when it exploded. But the waves of that won't get here until it's supposed to get here. And my guess is, from the ancients and everything that I can read, we are right on the cusp of the arrival of that sort of thing. And when I did the Omega Code, I couldn't believe what I was finding, how accurate it appeared to be. If you go back into Genesis, and the Lord says you have 120 years. That's what he told Noah. You have 120 years. So, as it was, so shall it be. So I was looking for 120 years. Where do you date it? Well, the first Jewish Congress for the establishment of the nation of Israel occurred in 1897. So you just go forward 120 years, 2017. So then I began to look and see, well, okay, if that's true, then all the cycles, 10-year, 20-year, 30, 40, 50, 70-year cycles, all should fall on very key, important dates in Israel's history, and they all do, every one of them. So the chances of that happening are quadrillions and quadrillions to one. So the divine hand of the Lord is obviously here, and that would go with what we were just talking about, the approach of Nibiru. Strange it is, now it's coming up in the codes. He's got another code here, too, I see. If you scroll down, it says, end of days, Nibiru, warning, 5776, and you were just the one who said, well, that's what Ed Dames did.
Yeah,
he issued a warning.
That's exactly what he just did right after this code came out. And of course, I don't even think Ed Dames knows the code people, and I don't know if they know him at all. But the code, he literally fulfilled that code, even if there's more fulfillment coming. So that's interesting to me. I mean, I'm not saying what Ed Dames. This is what's so interesting to me, though. On the other hand, is the fact that, I know a lot of people you hear about. They'll say, well, Marshall Masters is a New Ager, and Ed Dames, that's stuff we shouldn't even get involved with. But the thing they don't understand, like No Eyes and Red Elk and et cetera, when the Creator says, I'll pour out my Spirit on all flesh, what do they not understand about that term?
They don't like the term all. They want to refine this down to the arrogant Christian. We are the only ones who get true words of the Lord, and nobody else does. Well, that's foolishness. But this is the head up and locked, arrogant Christian. And you can't talk to them. There's no point in trying to talk to them. I've spent, 30 years trying to, talk to them, and you can't.
Yeah.
So there's
yeah.
little point in it.
Yeah, and what's so interesting though, and I posted that link today so people could watch Marshall Masters' video. You watched it and you saw how emotional he got, how emotional Marshall Masters got. Then he actually gave credit to Ed Dames for doing something that he said, God bless him. And I thought, well, that's almost putting an amen on. And of course, I know a lot of people won't like me saying that, but it's almost like an amen of what Ed Dames did to release that information or that warning that goes along with the Torah code.
Well, it does, and of course, like Marshall Masters said, this can be a death sentence. There's a lot of people dead now already that have been trying to release information about this incoming. What's his name from the Naval Observatory? Harrington.
Exactly.
He went down. Yeah, he's dead. And there's been just too many astronomers that. Do you remember the group of astronomers? I think they were on a tramway. Do you remember that? And the tramway broke loose, and they were all killed.
I vaguely do.
That was, I think, down in New Zealand or somewhere, and all these guys were looking for Planet X. And there's been a lot of those kind of mysterious, how do we say, kill-offs. It's kind of like Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can link in there almost to, James McCaney and also John Moore that were really big into releasing a lot of this data, and they really went almost totally quiet. And James McCaney says this is not something you can talk about anymore.
Yeah, well, he went silent, as far as I know. In fact, he almost not only went silent, he kind of distanced himself from it, which I suspected maybe he was told to. They have a way of getting to your family. Well, your family will be killed if you don't shut your mouth. But I don't, how are they going to, how are they going to, how do I word this, cover this up? This thing is inbound. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get bigger. The natural phenomenon of Earth changes is going to get worse and worse. In fact, if you go into the book of Enoch, first chapter, there's a little comment that makes people wonder, or should make people wonder, what would cause it. He talks about great fear and trembling shall seize them, even to the ends of the earth. The lofty mountains shall be troubled, the exalted hills depressed, melting like a honeycomb in the flame. The earth shall be immerged, and all things which are in it perish, while judgment shall come upon all, even upon all the righteous. Well,
wow.
That's pretty bad stuff.
Well, you asked, you said, how do you cover this up? If you'll remember, two people you can think about: Stan Deyo, number one, and Ed Dames, number two. And remember, Stan Deyo had said that they're going to keep this quiet as long as they can because people have to keep going to work and funding the government and funding all of these preparations for the elite and doing the elite's work. So they're not going to tell anybody. They're not going to warn anybody. And then remember, Ed Dames kind of gives a clue, and he says, there's a big war going on and lots of militaries in the Middle East, and then everybody looks up and goes home. So you say, how can they cover it up? Well, the elite keep clamoring that we need a world war.
Yes. And, of course, with the economies of the world tanking, which they are, in spite of our illustrious leader telling us differently, we have bread lines that are 20 miles long all across the nation,
you know,
and the only reason you don't see it, excuse me, is because we have food stamps.
Yeah.
If you didn't have such a thing as food stamps, where people could go in at their leisure and buy the food they need, you would have bread lines 20 miles long all across the country.
What's interesting?
Yeah.
I was just going to add there, Stuart, that your guest from last week, Davis Bunn, alias Thomas Locke, if you will.
Yes.
You know, he's got the new book coming out, I guess later this week, about the dominoes fall. And what's so interesting, after he did that really incredible interview, that you had with him, I began to notice news that was coming out, and it was global news, talking about the world bankers, and it literally was actually telling some of the details that he talked to you about in the interview, and also will have in his book. All of this is coming together. We've got a global financial collapse at hand, basically. We've got an inbound second sun that most people never knew existed, in our solar system. Inbound, we got a gravitational wave. We've got solar radiation coming like crazy. We've got a predicted kill shot series of events. And then here's a world war, we're on the verge of, and wow.
Well, things are great.
Yeah. Yep.
What me worry, Alfred E. Newman. Here's the headline for you. Major bank official. Banks are preparing for an economic nuclear winter. And it says, after years of giveaways to the mega banks marketed to the taxpayers as quantitative easing, the crutches shoved under the bank-controlled global stock trade are about to snap, and bankers now are saying they are preparing for a collapse. Congressman Ron Paul predicted that those crutches would fail, and the financial bubbles created by them would send the stock market into free fall. And the consequences will not be minor. So they are getting ready for it.
Yeah, Stuart, and what's very interesting, too, L.A. Marzulli posted a interesting blog post this morning, and the way it basically reads, it says Donald Trump has the elites nervous and worried, very nervous.
I noticed Trump went down to Mexico. How did that come out?
Was it absolutely
Have you heard
incredible? Yeah, I saw it. Absolutely incredible. He had a televised press conference. In other words, he had a secret meeting. Basically, it didn't stay secret, but he was invited by the president of Mexico, and he took a quick trip there because he has an immigration speech tonight at 8 o'clock. And, actually in about 20 minutes, I suppose. But he flew to Mexico, and everybody was, of course, condemning him and damning him for even thinking about going and playing like he had anything to do with politics or policy. But he went anyway, and then after the meeting that he had, which apparently went really well, he and the president of Mexico had a joint press conference that looked very, very presidential, and it was interesting. It was interesting, Stuart. You'll have to see it and listen to him, and it was almost like it was anointed. It was very special, the whole thing. And I tell you what, he's got that conference tonight, but I've never seen anybody with so many against him. He reminds me so much, literally, of Israel. Everybody hates him.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he does. No matter what he does, it's wrong, and whatever Israel does, it's wrong too. And yet Israel's still there, and Trump is still there. Maybe there's a message somewhere in that. I don't know. What do you think?
I think
are we watching the Cyrus effect?
I would not be surprised, and all of this too at the same time is we've got so much happening in the Middle East, and what has really actually short-circuited everything is this Erdogan's Turkish invasion of northern Syria, and we can go there whenever you want to do that.
Yeah, anytime.
Well, what's so interesting is what's coming out of media overseas. Now, they're not talking about much of it. Matter of fact, you hardly hear anything about Turkey or Erdogan or any of that stuff on mainstream media here in the U.S., but it appears that Obama and Erdogan and possibly Iran might have had some kind of setup. We talked earlier about something that Putin might allow, that he might allow, a portion of, Syria going to Assad and portion of it going to Iran and Turkey taking part of it and, them keeping their Russian bases. However, it appears now from the news that I'm gleaning and the intel that's coming out of Israel and the Middle East is the fact that Erdogan jumped the gun. Apparently, Erdogan, a little ahead of the time of the scheme, actually jumped the gun and sent his tanks into northern Syria ahead of the plan. And so he's in the latest report, out of the Middle East was the fact that his troops they had fought their way and had taken this location called, matter of fact, Depka file posted this evening, said Turkey's broad intervention in northern Syria from Jarablus, remember that's the town they took.
Yep.
Says the Turkish army, and this is from Depka file, this is out of Israel, says the Turkish army now will advance to the east, to the west, and the south. Now that sounds like to me, Stuart, that they're going to take a large portion of northern Syria, and that is Erdogan's plan. And it says the other post today was that Turkish and Kurdish forces braced in northern Syria for battle over Manbij in the Turkish invasion. So now you've got, the Turkish army and the Kurdish fighters braced now to go into combat together against each other. Now, what's so telling is the latest intel that's coming out of the Middle East is that it says that the Obama administration and the Iranian leadership, this is really unusual, are trying to get Erdogan to pull out of northern Syria, that he had went in too quick and their little plan wasn't apparently going to go. The Kurds were going to fight. And now they say unless Erdogan comes out of northern Syria, that they are expecting allies fighting allies and a Russian intervention by Putin.
Ooh. So, this is interesting what's going on over there, because here's a headline: Russia positions troops 50 miles from Alaska. Putin moves to protect the Russian Far East. Russia has announced plans to position a new coastal defense military division along its eastern coast, with troops expected to be stationed approximately 50 miles from Alaska. Well, didn't he overtake or it was an abandoned base in Norway, on northern Norway?
Yes,
I read something about that.
That was an abandoned NATO base, actually, and a U.S. base, joint base that under Obama, we all left, and Russia now has taken it over, and remember when Sarah Palin said I can stand here in Alaska and I can see Russia. She wasn't joking, really, actually, and there's been a release too recently, if not in American news, but in the Middle East news, and we've talked about it on some of your intel updates, that Russia has released a number of nuclear submarines into the Pacific, into the Atlantic, and up into the Middle East. So Russia's very, very busy with moving their military, and have been for almost a year or more now.
Well, of course, they've been probing not only English, but, Norway and a few of those places, haven't they, with their bombers and running trial cruise missile attack runs, and also along the U.S. borders. So what it looks like to me is we're slowly being encircled. Why would he do that unless Putin is planning to go into the Middle East? Because if he does that, does he not have to neutralize the United States?
Well, it's almost like he's playing chess, Stuart. And he's already, if you look at it from the angle of the NATO nuclear arsenal at Iklark Air Base, Putin has basically already compromised that, and also checkmate as far as NATO's nuclear deals there. And at the same time, he's got his fingers in getting into Turkey, but at the same time, he's still opposite of Turkey in some events. You remember back there when a lot of this started in Syria, you remember Obama was continually not affording the Kurdish fighters weapons, and he wouldn't give them to them. He just sent them to Iraq, which sent them to ISIS. And,
yes, I remember that.
And you remember Putin came out and said, I support Kurdistan. I actually support the Kurds. Now, will he still do that as they begin to be hammered by the Turkish tank battalions? He may. And that's one of the things I think that Iran and even the Obama administration now are nervous about, is because Erdogan jumped the gun, and he's going for territory. He wants a caliphate, a big one too. He jumped the gun, and they're nervous about what will Putin do now, because Putin has quite an array of assets in that region of the world.
Well, he would have to defend it, and does he not have a treaty with Assad anyway? Not that he can't break it, but he has to be careful because he's got treaties, obviously, with all the nations round about Israel. I firmly am a believer of the fact, in spite of arguments otherwise, that he is possibly Gog from the land of Magog, and it says, be thou a guard unto them, all the allies. Well, that's what he's doing. He's armed them all. He's guarding them, just like it says. And he even said that this was going to be an irreversible trend into World War III. So maybe that's what we're watching. We're watching the final alignments and the confusion that brings about World War III. And I don't know if you can call it confusion. I often wonder if this isn't, we're watching the Armageddon script here with the Chinese operations in the Pacific. In our, saber rattling, and then you got North Korea, and I remember Ed Dames's comment that it would be North Korea that would be the first that would use a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, in anger. In anger.
In anger, yeah, and haven't what's his name? The kid that runs it in North Korea. Hasn't he made mention of the exercises going on there that we're doing with Japan?
Yeah, he's made a number of nuclear threats. They say that where they manufacture or actually test some of the nuclear devices, that he's active again in that region. Plus, he's got his military making very strange and anomalous movements that the South Korea especially is watching, and we're trying to watch the satellites, but they've been following some of the movements, and it seems like he's got some nukes, because they're hot sightings that are being moved around the country and never left in one place for long. They're moving them around the country, and you could actually, he could really cause a problem. I mean, no doubt about it. But what's interesting too is the report that Kerry, John Kerry, the Secretary of State, is now saying that the situation in North Korea and the Chinese, especially the Chinese in this Yellow Sea and also the China Sea situation, that it's not worth a war. So it appears we're literally backing down again one more time. Well, of course, that's what we do. I mean, we just back down and back down. But apparently we're not going to confront. We're doing a lot of saber rattling, but we're not, our allies, Stuart, are finding out we're not going to back them.
Yeah. Yeah. The big coward, but the big bully at the same time. Kind of strange. Well, and then you have to take a look at, the space fleet, the TR-3B routine. So if we've got all these weapons, are we going to try and use them a little bit later? But it doesn't sound like that in the Bible, because it more or less says America's just taken out in less than an hour's time. We're just nuked. We're hit from all directions.
Yeah, I would even say biblically we're neutered.
Yeah, and it seems like, I don't know. Did you see that UFO in Spain at all that was on YouTube?
I'm trying to remember which one that was.
Well, they're by the ocean front. They're by the ocean front, and everybody's pointing out to the sky. This is video. I don't know if it's real or not. You never know with YouTube. But it looked pretty interesting. But they see this UFO. It hovers around, flies around a little bit. And then all of a sudden, this little alien gray appears. And one of the guys goes over to talk to him, or something like that. And I don't know what the gray did to him, but you can see him reach up. And one of the things that makes me think it's real is you watch this gray. He's a little short thing, probably maybe 3 feet tall if he's that. Anyway, he reaches up, touches the guy on the forehead, and you can see him blinking. The gray is blinking. His eyes are blinking. And then all of a sudden he just vanishes. And then the UFO comes down over the place where all these people are screaming and running and getting away. And then that's where the video stops. So it makes you wonder how much more of this weird stuff are we going to be witnessing as we approach the time of the end.
Well, I assume that we're going to see a lot more strange things than that before this is all said and done.
I think so. And there's another picture of Steve Quayle used to have a name for them. I can't remember what it is, but the satellites that take these pictures of the sun.
Yeah.
And there is a huge winged object that the satellite took a picture of. And there is a rumor going around, I don't know if you saw that either, on this object that's coming towards Earth, big object, but it's not Nibiru. They think it's a spaceship of some kind. Now they're even calling it an Anunnaki arrival or something. It's huge, whatever it is. So we're going to see all kinds of weird stuff, I think. I think this is just the beginning of it. It's just amazing. What else you got you want to talk about? Anything in particular that's on your mind?
Well, one of the interesting things, a report just came out, too, that it says the FBI now says that foreign hackers have now penetrated state election systems in the U.S. and says that their state databases are now compromised. I keep wondering, Stuart, are we really going to have a 2016 election in November?
Well, it kind of seems odd that right now they're talking about all of this and how the voting machines can be compromised. Doesn't it seem a little odd on the timing? That we know that Obama has to come up with something if that report that he definitely wants to, stay in the White House or whatever it is he's got in mind, that they could cancel or stop the election, or they could claim after the fact that, well, we're not sure this is right, so we're going to have to do this over again. And the other question is, you watch Hillary Clinton, and there is definitely something wrong.
Yeah.
The videos of her, she is not well, and they're hiding it. So are they going to be able to hide it? And if, for example, let's say she can't run or she has to drop out, not only because of baggage, we'll say, criminal baggage, but health. What happens if she drops out just before the election?
Well, I have seen some postings on some of the recent blogs that are talking about that they also seem to be, certain blogs seem to be really concerned about actually having an election in November, because they keep saying if something happens to one or the other candidate, such as sudden death, etc., heavy baggage that just are actually a health situation that arises to where one of them can't make the election, that they suppose the president will have to declare an emergency and actually delay or actually negate an election in November 2016. So we're in uncharted territory. We're in uncharted waters, Stuart, as far as a nation. We really, really are. And we're there with a president that simply writes his own executive orders and does what he wishes.
Yeah, and nobody stops him at all.
No.
And that's the question that I have always had. How come? How, we nailed Clinton in his famous, well, it all depends on what is, and I did not have sex with that woman. But anyway, we impeached him. How come Obama, who has now, I don't know how many issues that he could be impeached on, they don't do anything?
It almost makes me wonder. It almost makes me wonder if they haven't been given a little bit of prior knowledge of something coming in that literally, let's keep this as is as long as we can, because everything changes.
Well, when you talk about the national debt, here's another good example. They're spending money like they're never going to have to pay it back. They're never going to have to pay this national debt off. This whole thing is, how do we say, going to wash away.
Irrelevant.
So when you look at those kind of things going on, when you look at the underground activity, the bases, when you look at Jade Helm, and you see the military exercises, and you watch all this pre-positioning of military assets, it kind of does make you wonder exactly what they have in mind. And the other question, of course, is the God factor. What does God have in mind, and is he going to allow them to do their thing when they think they should do it, or is he going to allow them to do it when he thinks they should do it? I guess I'd have to tell everybody, pray that every day be a normal day, because I think we're soon going to be seeing some rather abnormal days. Anyway, just a comment, I guess.
While you're talking about the God factor, and I know we're running down on time, but I just wanted to interject this. The mainstream media, especially Fox, has been reporting that, they're now finding piles and piles of bodies scattered throughout Syria and Iraq that ISIS's forces have moved in and slaughtered. And they're we've now passed the 10,000 mark. 10,000 Syrian refugees Obama's brought into the United States. And so it said only just a very few, just a spattering, are even Christians, that most of these are Islam. And they're saying, where are the Christian refugees that were being tormented? And you know what? What I think about, Stuart, is, well, who do you think all of those stacks of bodies are in those?
Exactly.
So
And
you basically, Stuart, you have another Holocaust. And will God allow that much longer? Will God allow Babylon to reign so high over another Holocaust that's occurring in the Middle East right now, and it's not a secret. It's not a secret.
No, and we have our own Holocaust with the abortion business going on, and it's one thing after another, and you do wonder how long, oh Lord, how long? And I guess you and I would have hit the delete button, as we have mentioned some time ago, but he's not ready to hit it yet. But it's getting to the point now where I have a headline here that's really interesting. Rockefeller's fund own and have patented the Zika virus.
Huh. Wow.
They own it. They made it.
Well, Stuart, you remember the Barry Rothman's Zika code that I read the other day, that he had run a Tor code and said absolutely was created under Obama?
Yes, I remember that now that you bring it up. Well, that confirms it then.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're in a lot of trouble. Anything else before we shut down here?
I'll just mention what you said, and when we were talking about Zika, and when we originally mentioned this Torah code Barry Rothman ran on Zika, you said that in Esdras, and you're exactly right, because I looked it up again, that women would begin to birth monsters.
Yeah, I know. It goes along with the Book of Enoch, and everything goes haywire, and there's no question the electromagnetic environment is changing, and I think it's having an effect on mutations. It's having a mind effect on people. They're losing it for no particular reason now. And I remember the bots and what they had to say about